A kind of low-grade contemptuousness, particularly on college campuses, has become fairly common. So let's peel open this onion, shall we? Let me go ahead and voice what some of you are thinking.
My thoughts on Christ or Christianity? Personally, I believe it was created to instill fear. It was also used to force people into war, saying, well, these people are doing evil things, you should, now God says that we should go and kill them.
Christians have condemned everything that wasn't them. They persecuted people because they thought they were different. They found stupid little ways to kill people.
How about the Dark Ages? We had 1,000 years where the church God had totally permeated society and nothing went anywhere.
Hooray for science and the Enlightenment. Good riddance to Christianity with its wars, crusades, witch burning, slavery, colonialism, aversion to the hard facts of science, exclusive truth claims, moral demands, hypocrites, and doctrines of judgment and hell.
Did I miss anything? Well, it would take hours to fully diffuse all these charges. But I trust that what follows will be adequate for those who are not willfully skeptical. And for those who are, I hope you'll be able to hold your aversion to Christianity in check and at least finish the series. Perhaps God Himself, in His mercy, will convince you somewhere else along the way.
Number 1. No doubt about it. Terrible things have been done in the name of Christ. But that's no reflection on Jesus and His teachings. It's an indictment of sinful men. I can cite hundreds of examples. One will have to suffice. Concerning the practice during the Crusades of forcing people to convert under threat of death, well, Jesus told His followers, "You know that those who are considered rulers lord it over them. It shall not be so among you. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give His life as a ransom for many." Elsewhere, God declared that it's the goodness of God that leads you to repentance. To use violence to effect conversions is to get it just about as wrong as is possible. G.K. Chesterton put it well when he observed that these problems arise not because the Christian ideal has been tried and found wanting, but rather because in certain instances it has been found difficult and left untried. And then there's a related point. Number 2, when man's wrath is substituted for God's love, the so-called Christians who are doing it, as we've just seen, are being completely inconsistent with the truth they're obligated to obey. But now consider the flip side. For example, the over 100 million people who've been killed by atheists during the 20th century alone. Their actions can be, and often are, perfectly consistent with their, quote, truth. Hitler, Stalin, and Mao, for example, were acting in a manner congruent with their acceptance of Darwinian materialism when they murdered some 50 million, quote, products of random mutation, end quote, in a sincere effort to build a more perfect society. We need to keep these things firmly in mind if we're to honestly assess the lessons of history. Number 3. It's flagrantly dishonest to overlook the great blessings brought to the world as Christian principles have been faithfully practiced. Modern science, the abolition of slavery, care for the poor, hospitals, orphanages, universal education, free market economics, and the Protestant work ethic, women's and racial equality, child labor laws, concern for the environment, the inspiration for beautiful and enduring works of art, music, literature, and architecture, the rule of law, civil liberty, religious freedom, the Magna Carta, and American Constitution, on and on. These are all byproducts of the Christian faith. Some people may want to deny it. Millions more simply ignore it. But the fact remains. And if the testimony of history isn't enough, just go to the villages and towns of the Third World and find out who's really down in the trenches working to alleviate suffering. Too far to travel? Well, then check out what's going on in your own hometown. Again, who's doing most of the work to feed the hungry, care for the orphan, or bring hope to those in prison? Swallow hard. It's been going on for 2,000 years.
Perhaps the best way to cut through all the static surrounding this issue is to ask a very fundamental question. Forget for just a moment all the hype, all the noise and pressure to be cool and embrace a rock and roll lifestyle, and to even look down your nose at Christianity, and ask yourself, if you were dying and needed blood, from whom would you prefer to get it? From a rebel or a disciple of God? Here, I'll use myself as an example. Until I was 26, it was sex, drugs, and rock and roll. As a result, I would have had a number of risk factors based upon the screening you're given when you donate blood. Then I became a Christian and sought to follow God and keep His commandments. Is it just a coincidence that the lifestyle He has ordained for man now makes me an optimum donor? So seriously, if you were dying, from which world, from which Eric, would you want a transfusion? You see, the truth and the life is in the blood.
Guess who to the rescue on our holy mission to uphold the tradition of the Spanish Inquisition and preempt your decision by forcing your confession. Now let that be a lesson. You think you're messing with.
There may be other knots in people's minds concerning Christianity. We haven't time to unravel them all. But keep something in mind. Many brilliant skeptics, from the Apostle Paul to Malcolm Muggeridge, have become devoted followers of Christ. Examine your objections honestly and with humility. Could they possibly be just an excuse for unbelief? Take as just one last example the very common and quite enlightening charge of hypocrisy.
Christianity, it's about money, and they're just a bunch of hypocrites.
I think they're just give me your stuff religion. They just want to take it and take it for themselves.
Neighbors, let us join today in the holy love of God and money. Because neighbors, no one loves you like He loves you. And what better way to show your love than to dig deep into your pockets? Dig real deep and give until it hurts.
It's a front they put up just to make people think that they're good because they go to church.
It's nothing but a bunch of ignorance and hypocrisy.
I have become heavily involved in the Church of Divine Love.
Fucking demon horse!
We spent most of our time listening to inspirational tapes and demonstrating against schools which taught tolerance of homosexuals. We got arrested, too.
If Jesus saves, well, it better save himself. From the gory, glory seekers, we use His name in death.
First off, keep in mind that the only hypocrisy that will be judged by God when you stand before Him will be your own. Don't cop out and try to hide behind someone else's sin. It doesn't work. And as for the charge that the visible church is made up of imperfect people, including the occasional bold-faced hypocrite, well, no question about it. And those hypocrites will have a lot to answer for when they stand before a God who both sees all things and has a zero-tolerance threshold for impenitent hypocrisy. For the name of God is blasphemed among the Gentiles because of you.
Soon I discovered that this rock thing was true. Jesus was the devil.
But again, don't strain at a gnat and swallow a camel. For every high-profile minister who's been caught living a lie, there are tens of thousands of good men and women who quietly go about doing their best to faithfully love God and their neighbors as themselves.
What is it about our culture that drives people to ignore this far greater good while fixating on the occasional bad? And again, don't forget that the bad comes about because people are unfaithful to Christian principles, not as a result of following them. But do you know what's even more interesting? It's what happens when we turn this around.
Why can artists get rich promoting lifestyles that hurt people and that poison the waters of popular culture? But because they love their mama or do an occasional benefit.
My friends, my ex-lovers, people that I haven't even met that die from this disease.
Or periodically sing a thoughtful and virtuous song, well, suddenly that pound of good becomes more important than the ton of bad. Where's the hypocrite patrol when you really need them?